Hi, I'm Josh, Content Marketing Manager at AutoRABIT. In this module, you'll learn how to implement strong access control, manage roles and permissions, and securely store credentials, all aligned with the principle of least privilege to ensure enterprise-grade security within the AutoRABIT platform. If you look at one of the foundational principles of enterprise security, it's the principle of least privilege. It's the idea that users should only be granted the minimum level of access required to perform their roles. In the context of AutoRABIT ARM, this principle becomes even more critical because we are dealing with highly privileged operations like deployments, metadata changes, sandbox refreshes, and integrations with systems like Git or Jira. Now, every one of these actions can impact live business processes, so it's important to comply with the principle of least privilege. Also, AutoRABIT does it through role-based access controls, wherein you can define distinct roles within the system. We also have support for it via environment-level access controls. For example, only designated users can deploy to the likes of UAT or production. We also have audit trail logging, wherein every action that's performed within the system is logged and visible in the UI, thereby allowing full traceability and accountability. That said, admin privileges are still necessary for a select few individuals. Now, administrators in ARM play a vital role in the sense that they are responsible for setting up the platform in the form of connecting to different Salesforce environments, configuring repositories, and managing these integrations. They're also responsible for defining user roles, permissions, enforcing policy gates, and enforcing quality checks. They are also responsible for creation of environment pipelines, CI jobs, and lastly but not least is managing user credentials, tokens, and secrets. Now let's actually look at how the principle of least privilege works within the UI itself. For that, we get into the My Account section within Settings and configure an email domain. Now I have a user that I'm about to register who carries the domain of Gmail. So I'm going to go ahead and let AutoRABIT know that this user will have this domain extension. And once this is saved, we are good to go ahead and create that user. But before actually working on the creation of the user, it's important to define their roles. Not every user will be an administrator, so while we are activating users, it's important to assign roles during their activation. And that's exactly why we define the roles at the beginning before even creating users. Talking about roles, I can create one for Release Manager, let's say, and I will go ahead and get specific permissions here that speak to release management activities, and I will give them access to CI jobs, reports and dashboards, data loader activities, core deployments, and version control as well. Of course, even when it comes to different modules that users have, you can further limit the level of detail as to which modules a release manager will have access to. Once the role is created, it's time for us to create this user. I'm going to go ahead and input a string here, and I'm going to use the Gmail domain. As for the username, let's use this. This will be a random phone number, and I'm going to populate the country, state, and zip code. Time zone is important because any jobs that you set up from within the system will be run based on this particular time zone. So it's important to assign the right one here. I'm going to go ahead and assign the recently created Release Manager role for this particular user now. I can go ahead and save and activate this user right away, or save this user and activate it at a later point in time with the assigned role. Now, once the user is created, this person can be given only specific access to certain environments. Now, this is the environment-based access policy that we were talking about earlier. We've already defined the role for this individual as to whether he or she will be able to access CI jobs, data loader, My Account, and so on. Now within CI jobs, let's say this user should not have the ability to deploy to a production environment. Then that level of granularity can be achieved from the permissions view. So I can go to this particular user here, and you will be able to see multiple subtabs. This is where you can see the role that is assigned to the user. You can also individually assign specific Salesforce orgs that the user can access. You can have certain automation jobs that are visible to this particular user. If I select only these two jobs, for instance, then the user will only be able to see Install Tool and VLO Clone. No other jobs will be visible to that user. Likewise, I can go to version control in here. I can go ahead and look for the repository that we've just created recently, which is VR GitHub repo. And let's say I want this user to have access to the main branch. They should not be able to see the development or the integration. I can go ahead and have that configured. So permissions are a way to filter your access controls even further so that they're specific to certain environments. Once done, you can go ahead and save this. And that pretty much sums up how you configure users with specific permissions in AutoRABIT. We'll also take some time to see how credentials in AutoRABIT are created and securely stored. For that, we go to Settings, we go to Credentials here, and we create a credential. This is something that we have already done before for version control and ALM systems. You can see there are multiple credential types. There are usernames that can be created with passwords or personal access tokens. You can use SSH keys for authentication. You can go ahead and use credentials stored in an external system like HashiCorp Vault. You can also use application tokens to be able to authenticate to another environment. Now, when you create credentials, as you can see in here, they get stored in AutoRABIT's Credential Manager, which is an effective way to securely store your credentials so that whenever you perform activities, be it commits, merges, or deployments, we're able to validate the environment's credentials from this credential store. Thanks for watching. You've now seen how AutoRABIT enforces secure access, role-based controls, and centralized credential management to help protect your DevSecOps ecosystem. In the upcoming videos, you will see how to deploy securely from code to cloud, how to see deployment history, and how to overview the analytics. To see the whole course and get certified, visit the AutoRABIT Learning Hub.